So even though that it is linked to that, it is linked to support of Hitler and the Nazi regime.
LGBTQ flag is linked to HIV.
Okay.
That's how,
Just
people see it. People see it as like, oh, wow, AIDS, right? They see the rainbow flag. I think a lot of people think AIDS.
Andrew Wilson totally cooks this they-them vegan feminist in this debate, as Andrew Wilson torches the pride flag during this clash over civil rights, and this woman struggles to defend her position using the Confederacy as an example and gets torched for it. Let's get in.
Look, a civil right is, something, it's actually, I think, pretty vague in our legal language, but
yeah, so
a civil right is something like a human right that most people would call.
So, like, you have a right to put that flag up. Okay,
no,
great.
No.
I have a right to put that flag up too.
Okay, see, that's where the confusion is. So I'm talking about when I say, government entities have the right to put up like pride flags. The pride flag is the symbol of the civil rights of gay people to get married, own property, not be, have their house raided while they're having sex or something like that.
Well, okay. That's an assertion. So let's start with this. So you just making the claim like, it is true that this flag represents this. That's great. It represents that to this group of people. I would make the same argument with the Confederate flag. Same exact argument. That's great that it represents a negative thing towards this group of people, but it represents a positive thing towards this group of people. It would be the same thing with the LGBTQ flag. It'd be the same argument both ways.
No, look, the problem here is that the condition that I gave for, it being fine for them to use this form of free speech is the fact that it represents the civil right of that group of people. But the flag, the Confederate flag, doesn't represent the civil rights of who?
It would represent the civil rights of any people who wanted to see consistency so that they can have their flag up if they so chose. That would still be a civil right.
That isn't, maybe there's some vagueness on the civil rights thing, but I don't think that you think that, putting a flag up wherever you want on whatever property you want is a civil right. You don't believe that, right?
I think that if you were going to be consistent with your view, you would need to believe that.
That's not, okay, this isn't answering my question. You don't think that it is a civil right to display
I think it's a civil right if you put up a gay flag on government buildings. Well, I'm trying to answer the question because you said I wasn't answering it. If you put it up on a government...
I have to re-ask it for you to answer.
If you put it up on a government... You didn't ask me a question?
I was in the middle of asking you the question.
You said I'm not getting the answer, so I was just giving you the answer.
So, look, the question was, do you think that it's a civil right to see your flag equally displayed? Because that was what you started to say.
No, I think that it would be... equally consistent to say if you can have an LGBTQ flag flying on some state building and that's constitutional, then you'd have to say the same thing about a Confederate flag.
That the argument was from the fact that that flag represented the civil rights of that group.
That's nice. What I'm telling you is that that's an assertion. Like, what would demonstrate the assertion? That's
an assertion based off of the Supreme Court historically ruling it that way. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not making I can make a moral claim, and we can talk about like why people shouldn't, because I think, there might be like violence ensued by one versus the other, et cetera. But
okay, so why should you be able to have the gay flag up but not the Confederate flag?
Because I think that one represents the civil rights of a group, whereas the other one doesn't. One is more likely to incite violence. I don't think that the pride flag being up is more likely to incite violence.
Do you think heritage is part of civil rights?
I think that I think heritage is part of civil rights?
Yeah. When you're talking about the historical use of the LGBTQ flag, for instance, this is going to have some type of like historical meaning to the people in which that flag represents, right?
Right.
Okay. Isn't the Confederate flag going to have the exact same thing? It's going to have some kind of historical meaning when it comes to family lineage for people who live in the South, for people who... they had ancestors who fought in this war, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be part of their heritage and history. So don't you think that would have specific meaning to them as well?
Right, but there might, like I said, be overriding considerations. Like if hanging that flag caused violence or something like that. Obviously, you would say, like, okay, if we started hanging up Confederate flags and then more violence ensued against, like, African Americans, you would say we probably shouldn't hang it, right?
So then, by that metric, are you saying that if LGBTQ flags incited violence in people who were not LGBTQ, we should not hang LGBTQ flags?
Incited violence because of the flag itself? Like, if it would have to be a large amount.
That would be the same thing.
It would have to be a large amount of violence.
Yeah, so as long as, so basically what you're saying then, just to make sure I got your view right, what you're actually saying here is as long as people who don't like the LGBTQ flag being up go ahead and commit a bunch of violence, they should probably take the LGBTQ flag down.
There would be multiple solutions to that, but that could be one of them. Yeah, if there was, like, let's say that was the only way to get people to stop being violent, that might be an alternative. Now, that's saying that that's, like, necessary to do to stop the violence. Now, if there's other things where we can preserve, like the protection of the displaying of it for civil rights purposes, for the representation of civil rights, and at the same time lower the violence in some other way, then yeah, we should do that alternative. Do you think that's controversial?
No, but now you're just switching the position, because initially what you said was, this flag, if it's causing violence because it offends them so much that they can't help but become violent at the very look of it, or whatever it is, whatever it is that makes them respond negatively and commit violence because of this flag. All that would actually be doing is incentivizing people who are oppositional to the LGBTQ flag to commit violence, because then you would want to take that flag down, right?
Well,
Let me know in the comments what you think, but this feminist is a complete hypocrite. On one hand, she wants to say this flag is okay, in this hand, this flag isn't, but for different reasons. This one represents this one represents this, and I'm the arbiter of truth, so now I know exactly what they represent. So I'm just going to be subjective and discriminate and say one flag is okay than the other. Like, when this woman complains about discrimination, violating civil rights, yet she literally is the thing that she claims to hate, and yet she doesn't get it. I mean, Andrew Wilson obviously gets it using simple logic, but if you're going to say you can, hold up this flag, then as Andrew Wilson said, if you're going to be consistent with your views, then you have to let the Confederacy flag up to begin with as well. Like, I'm not from the South, I don't have any heritage, but I can completely understand Andrew Wilson's argument in that means something to them. And if you're going to impose what you mean on someone else's views, then you're the one violating them. But folks, hit that like button. It helps the algorithm. I appreciate it. And let's get back in.
For one, I would say, listen, I would hold the same standard. Let's go back to this, because I would hold the same standard if we had a rule where we said, okay, we can display the Confederate flag and we can display the pride flags, whatever. If there started to be violence committed on one end because of the Confederate flag, I would say, like, okay, well, before we move to taking the flag down, we should move to stopping the violence to whatever metric we can. Now, there might be other reasons why I think, like, maybe we shouldn't display a Confederate flag. I think the Confederate flag in and of itself represents the negative part of the history that shouldn't be displayed as if we're proud of it. I think it represents slavery. You don't think it does?
No, it doesn't represent slavery. It represents the heritage of people who had family members who died in the war on behalf of their beliefs.
And their beliefs were?
Well, the beliefs were to their state. It was being loyal to their state. Most Confederate soldiers didn't have any views on slavery, really, one way or the other. This was the higher-ups who had views like this. So the average soldier, in fact, there's one famous case of them saying, why is it that you're fighting in this war? You're so poor, you can't own a slave. And the response was, because y'all are here. So what that means is that as the North was invading the South, there was a lot of incentive for people to go and fight against it. They called it the War of Northern Aggression. And many of them had cause. They got their houses burned down, things like this during Northern marches to assist in combat in that war. And yeah, I'm sure that people are very proud of the heritage that they come from in the South, from people fighting for the core beliefs and on behalf of their families, even if you don't like the cause itself. The cause itself is still very much baked into the American history, just like for instance, I couldn't ban the LGBTQ flag because of HIV, right? I couldn't be like, well, that's a stain on our history, the fact that there was a bunch of gay sex parties and they were giving it to each other. I couldn't do that, right? I don't think that you can make a good, honest argument as to why it is that people couldn't be proud of the heritage of their family fighting in the Civil War.
Look, the flag is a symbol of the leaders of that war, right?
No, it's not.
The people, you just admitted this, the people who respond in that way, oh, well, we're fighting because you guys are here, they're there because they're there. They live there, they're trying to protect their homes and properties. That's perfectly fine. The problem is the people who were starting those wars were the ones who were using those flags. That's like saying, like, well, so-and-so wasn't a Nazi and, well, I don't know if I can say that word, fuck. So-and-so wasn't a, Schnazi in World War II. They just had families that were, Schnazi members. Or maybe they were just fighting because they thought it was like a good thing. They were fighting the other powers that invaded. You wouldn't say certainly then that, like, they should allow Schnazi flags on government buildings, right?
If the standard is that, we're allowed to put up the flag of our choosing because it has some representation value that we see it as. Like, let's say the people saw the Nazi flag as being something other than I heart Hitler. I wouldn't see a problem with that. No, of course not.
Okay, so even though that it is linked to that, it is linked to support of Hitler and the Nazi
LGBTQ flag is linked to HIV.
Okay.
That's how, I mean,
just to be
people see
clear.
it. People see it as like, oh, wow, AIDS, right? They see the rainbow flag. I think a lot of people think AIDS.
Yeah, that's fine, but there's not like gay leaders that are out there like pushing for AIDS, right?
There's not like anybody out there pushing for the Confederacy. Who's pushing for the Confederacy?
I live in the Deep South. There's people pushing for the Confederacy.
Who? Give me a single actual institution of any kind, anywhere, or any real body of people, anywhere, who's pushing for the Confederacy.
What do you think I mean, there have been moves historically to cede some of the states again.
That's not the Confederacy.
Because of the...
Yeah, this woman is not consistent with her views. I mean, she wants to bring up the Nazi flag. Okay, but she doesn't want to show that one because it represents something bad and stuff like that, and we shouldn't do that. But it's her view. Andrew Wilson is using her argument and her standard and her view and holding her accountable to it. So if you're going to have it where you can show the pride flag for exactly the reason that she gave, by definition, she also has to allow the Confederacy flag and she has to allow the Nazi flag. Like, this is the problem with so many feminists, is that they don't actually want to be held accountable. They pick and choose which policies, which laws to follow, what they believe, without even thinking or considering the implications of what they're doing. And then they whine and complain about the consequences that they themselves created. They claim they're against discrimination, and yet she, right in front of your eyes, is actively, subjectively discriminating against who can show whose flag, when they all have a valid reason under her own argument. But folks, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you thought about what Andrew Wilson had to say cooking this whack job feminist in this clip. Thanks again, like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.